Drew Petersen, it's great to have you on Above the Treeline.
Psyched to chat with you.
How's your summer been? I should say fall.
Fall's been really good. I moved to Carbondale this fall, so that's been like the big thing in my life, and it's really fun to have a new home and community, and yeah, it's really exciting.
So you're going to be skiing in Aspen, huh?
Yeah, I'm an Aspen guy now, which I guess I have mixed feelings about, but I do love skiing Aspen, so I'm pretty excited for that. But I guess I gotta get like I don't know, like I need like bougier ski outfits and for collars and champagne.
That depends on where you're skiing in Aspen. Is the snow flying there?
Not really. Fall's kind of hanging on here. It's wonderful. It's sunny and warm, but I'm loving it.
Yeah. What do you do in the shoulder seasons like this? Just hang out?
Run. Been mountain biking a lot because I was running a lot this summer and kind of angered my leg a little bit. So been balancing it with mountain biking and went on a desert trip a couple weekends ago to Moab. That was really fun. I know this is supposed to be an interview. How are you doing?
That's funny. It is an interview. But I've been doing this Above the Treeline podcast, and I think this is going to now be episode 18, maybe. I've been mainly interviewing industry people from around the world. Mental illness and suicide and depression and addiction it doesn't matter what business you're in or where you are in the world. It's everywhere. So I thought we should certainly talk about that, but also talk about fun stuff too.
And there's a lesson in that, right? That it's a part of everything, including the fun stuff and the light stuff.
I'm seeing your TED Talk all over the place on Instagram. I guess I'm seeing there's a clip out there, and Facebook. How's that been going for you?
It's good. It's good to put it out there. I think you definitely know what I mean. It's something that I put a lot of work into. And then also I feel like there's an irony in the term public speaking, because public speaking mostly happens in private. So like putting the TED Talk out online, like a lot of people are seeing this and they're like, whoa, you're good at speaking. I'm like, yeah, that's actually my career. People just don't know that. But it's really fun to put it out there. It's really fun to see that it's helping people and getting the message out there. When does yours go live?
Yeah, it did go live.
Amazing. How is it going?
It's a little weird. Like you, though, you put yourself out there on purpose, right? And so I had a message to deliver, and I think it's being received. It's interesting they chose election week to put my talk out because it has to do with the mail-in votes and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, we'll see. How are you organized? And besides the fact that you're a professional skier, we do need to talk about that. But
I've been trying to figure this all out a little bit better. So I don't have the succinct answer for you yet, but I am working on making a more succinct answer. But I think it's easy to say that I wear a lot of different hats. And the way that I introduced myself, I really prefer to be identified based on my values and who I am as who I show up in the world and in my community. And in that realm, most of my work, most of my life is built around mental health awareness and suicide prevention. Like we're talking about right now, that's mostly through public speaking. But then that really arose and is in combination in an Venn diagram with my athletic career. So I've been skiing professionally for my entire adult life. Normally when I get on a podcast, that's what people just like immediately know me as, is like, you're a pro skier. I do a lot of different things. And with that work around mental health awareness and suicide prevention, I am actually in the process of starting a foundation. Part of starting that foundation is so that I have more direction and a funnel to take this energy and momentum that I'm creating. And the other reason that I'm creating a foundation is that the work that I've been doing through creating ski films about mental health and really putting myself out there with my own story has been not the smoothest. It's not easy to do. And I want to make it easier for other people to share their stories. And I want to be part of being able to lift up other people and have them have that impact on their communities in the way that I've had that impact in my community. And so it's not a succinct answer, but it's also an honest answer. And I think along this journey, I've learned like that I've got to keep it true and genuine to what my path is as a human being, not just as a speaker or as an athlete or as a businessman.
Amen, brother. That's great. That's awesome. And I think you were put in a really unique place, as I feel I am in my industry, right? There's something really unique and special about knowing what your purpose is and feeling where you're bringing value to other people. And I feel like in some cases I piss off a few people every now and then. It's all for good, right? It's all to raise awareness. It's all to have a conversation. You know, when you and I met at TEDx Breck. And there was another skier there, a younger guy. And it was really the first time that I made this connection of living in the mountains, living the life that when I was a 14 or 15-year-old kid, I dreamed about, right? I dreamed about going to the Warren Miller films every fall. But what I didn't realize was the connection between that sort of really intense, active lifestyle and suicide. And I would suppose along with that is, just mental health in general, depression, substance abuse, the whole pile of poop. And I really didn't recognize that until I thought about my own son and my son's story, Alex. And it just was like, wow, it was a real awakening for me to hear about just the intensity of the lifestyle. And then along with that is when you weren't skiing or doing something that was intense, then you've got to be by yourself and live with that less exciting, less interesting part of your life. And I had no idea how big of a deal it was in the mountain communities, the Breckenridge and the steamboats, and I suspect in Aspen as well, any other big ski town where there's just that go lifestyle.
Yeah, it's been a realization for me too. And I think that's
Really
telling for all of us because we're only seeing the world through the lens we have. When I started to realize what was going on around me, it had two effects. One, I'm not alone. There is a mental health and suicide crisis in America at large, but really in the Mountain West and largely in mountain towns. And that makes me feel less alone. And then number two is it terrifies me. And it still doesn't make sense, even though I'm a part of it, is like trying to grapple with and understand that reality. And that's where a lot of my work is now, is like trying to figure out how do we connect with these outdoor communities and with mountain towns. It's a conversation that not only do we need, but it's a conversation that everybody wants to, because I think that there's a lot of people who are starting to realize and understand that this problem around high suicide rates and high rates of anxiety and depression and mental illness are really in our homes, like literally in our homes and in our hometowns and with our neighbors and our friends and our communities.
Yeah. And it sounds childish, but there's a peer element to it as well, right? I remember when we were working with some of the fentanyl folks about bringing awareness to the ski towns and said, well, why isn't this like in the lift lines? Like it should be like everywhere. And I have had so many conversations of riding up the chairlifts with guys that were just like, guys, what are you doing? I recall one conversation specifically riding back down Breckenridge, the gondola with the guy, and they were talking about going and doing meth or something crazy at home. And I bring up the drug component because there's a relationship between drug abuse, obviously, and suicide for sure. And he and I just got chatting. And at the end, we gave each other a big hug. And he was just like, oh, man, I just really need to hear that. And it was pretty amazing just riding on the gondola after a day of skiing. And so many people just need to hear the message. And I think it gets overlooked, right? Everybody just says, oh, not me.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you speak specifically to the drug abuse component of this and substance abuse. Like for me personally, I had an abusive relationship with alcohol. I'm 5.5 years sober now. Actually, I'm closing in on 6 years sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you. On the topic of substance abuse in our communities, these are conversations that I have now that this is a lot of my professional life, but it's still part of my personal life too. I consistently have these conversations around addiction and recovery, both in my personal and my professional lives. And to that note around fentanyl too, we do need to normalize and get Narcan and real education front and center and into all these communities. And we do see success with it. But I love what you just said there. It needs to be in the lift lines. I do think that
we just have stickers in the lift line, like you're staring at somebody's back.
We have to make all of this cool. I have a friend who runs a recovery nonprofit called Reconnected in Eagle County. He always says that we're up against sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and we've got to make everything else cool. And we are literally up against drugs in this instance, and we got to make Narcan cool.
What have you been working on in your ski profession life? Have you been making some films, or where have you been recently that there was fresh snow?
Oh, man. I haven't been on snow since, I guess, June.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't really chase winter in the Southern Hemisphere anymore. I would love to. To go have some more of those adventures. The last time I skied was closing day at a basin, pond skimming So that was very fun.
Did you make a cross?
Yes and no. I love pond skimming. And so I was pond skimming with some buddies, and I was like, oh man, I haven't fallen pond skimming in quite a few years. And I think that means that I haven't tried anything. So I hit it switch, and I fell really hard the first time, but I did get it the next time. But it is funny to be like 31 years old and just like still be such a child in that realm and still get that childlike joy too. But yeah, my ski life, what you've seen, the film that I put out last year, Feel It All, that centers around running the Leadville 100 or 100-mile ultramarathon here in Colorado and then skiing the peaks around the course, and really using it as an examination of my mental health journey through the relationship with sport, mostly through skiing. That's the last large scale project that I've been working on in skiing. I think that we all often have the tendency to be like, what's next? And with that one, I really tried to resist that temptation of what's next. And what was next for that was growing the impact of it. So that's what I've been focused on. But I'm getting ready to launch this new media project I've been working on. It's a podcast, but they're chairlift interviews. So one-on-one on the chairlift with a ski pole as the microphone. So we're going to have you on, and we'll talk TEDx.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of people in the ski world, but then also I've got artists and rock stars and whoever on there. So we'll have to go skiing, and we'll go rip groomers.
There we go. You're a rock star too, Drew. Although you said you're 31, that makes you a little old to be a ski rock star, doesn't it? Are you getting on the older side of that?
It does. And I think I was in denial of that for a little while. And now I take great joy in like being the elder statesman. It was just like, I don't know, maybe 3 winters ago or so that a switch just flipped where I went from being like the youngest person on the trip till 1 or 2 years later, it was like, oh, I am always the oldest person now. And so now when we're out shooting for a ski movie or something, and we roll up on a huge cliff, I'm like, we've got a younger kid here to hit it first. But it's fun to be in acceptance of the stage I'm in too, growing up within this.
So did you do the Leadville this year?
I did, yeah.
Again?
I ran Leadville.
Did you get the big buckle or the little buckle?
This year I got the little buckle because it's more practical, like size-wise. It just wears a little easier. Don't need another big one. I got a little one because I blew up again. This was probably the most fun that I've ever had running a 100-miler. That was my 4th Leadville and my 6th 100. And it's always a different experience. But this year, like running Leadville was the lightest I ever held anything. Doesn't mean it's easy, but I just have zero pressure, expectation. Like everything felt light and fun out there.
That's so great. So
what it was really special
for 100 miles.
What do I think about? Everything. I got a ton of time.
That part that would be so hard for me is what am I going to occupy my brain with for 100 miles? Not that I can.
Oh, you find things. I talk a lot too, especially Leadville. There's 750 runners, so most of the time you're near somebody. So I talk and make friends a lot.
Wow. I can't even imagine. The pain just has to be excruciating, or at least it was, at least in the movie, it comes across as a pretty unpleasant experience, but it sounds like this year was a little smoother for you.
Yeah, it was still really painful.
Oh man. So so you talk a lot at schools, what do you do to get the message out? Because I think you and I communicated in your Salt Lake at some high schools, and how are you getting the word out?
Yeah, I really believe in the power of in-person experiences. So like, I think that there's some irony in that, because I think most of the people know me from the internet and from films that are distributed digitally. But I think in-person experiences are super powerful, and that's how to have a lasting impression. So a lot of that's been through public speaking. And then in this past year, I've been putting a lot of effort and focus into connecting with youth and getting into schools. And that has been really powerful. That's the greatest joy in my life, as well as I think the greatest impact of what I do. So earlier you said something to the effect of finding your purpose. And about a month ago, I was in Boise, Idaho, and I went to and spoke at Boise State University, and then did a community event for public. But then while I was there, I also went into 4 different middle schools and 4 different high schools and met with their Hope Squads, which are classes of kids who are nominated by their peers to lead suicide prevention efforts within their school. These kids are awesome
Wow.
and they're super bright. Learning from them is what gives me the most hope. And then I also gave talks at those 4 high schools. One of them was an all-school assembly. It was 1,300 kids in a gym because they didn't have an auditorium big enough for 1,300 kids. And we showed
Yeah.
my film on the scoreboard, like on the basketball scoreboard, which like that, I thought that was cool. But I share this to say to what you brought up earlier of finding your purpose is when I was there at that high school, it's Timberline High School. I really hate watching my films. I made them. I don't need to watch them anymore. But I went into
Yeah.
the gym to take a picture of this because I knew I was going to want to remember this moment. And it was at a point in the film where I'm speaking really specifically to a memory of suicidal thoughts. And
Yeah.
normally I'm not like very impacted by hearing my own voice, like, but in that moment, it did bring me back to that. And then I looked around at these
Yeah.
1,300 kids, and that is the exact moment that is my purpose in life. It's why I didn't kill myself. It's why I survived. It's why I'm here
Yeah.
today. And this is my purpose on earth. And yeah, that's what I've been focused on. And there's a Japanese term called ikigai. That's a There's no like direct translation, but the closest translation is a reason for being. We would like to call it
Yeah.
a purpose, but I really like the term ikigai for that. And that's what I've been finding out there.
That's so cool. I'm sure that room was dead silent when you were talking too. It's interesting. That emotion just connects people, right? They just feel it in your heart. It's hard to ignore. I'm so grateful for you giving me a little guidance on my talk in Breckenridge because I did get a little choked up. But it's hard not to. It's real, right? It's a feel it all, 100%. Are you still going to be on ski magazines and all that stuff? Are we still going to see you like in ads and whatever? No?
Yeah, I still do that kind of stuff. I think like it is how we started this conversation, that topic around identity. I do still ski professionally, and that's still a pinch me moment, the same way that it was when I
Yeah.
was 22 years old. It's the same pinch me moment now of, whoa, like living out my childhood dream, and also like I'm still doing it. But the pro skiing side of things looks a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's ski movies, sometimes it's ski magazines, sometimes it's just being a guy who gets to connect with a kid in the lift line or something. And that's the kind of stuff that I love more than the
Yeah.
cameras and
Yeah.
magazines and stuff.
Yeah, we've talked about Alex, and I just wish he'd had a chance to meet you and hear your story. And you just never know, right? You just never know how you're impacting the world and people that are hearing your message. And that's just what makes it really neat. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the people that I generally speak with are corporate business types of folks. There are actually organizations in the broader industry that I represent that talk about mental illness. It's real, right? If you run an organization and you have 100 employees, I guarantee it, there's a group of those employees that are really struggling. It may only be a couple of them, but it's only going to take one to really have an impact on that group. What do you, besides just raising awareness of suicide and all the related addiction and things, what do you look for? What are the markers, right? It's not one thing to say, yeah, suicide's horrible and we have to do more, but what is it as a manager in a business or maybe a teacher in a school? What are you looking for?
Yeah,
How do you,
I'll answer that pretty broadly and open-ended, and then please ask follow-up questions. When we're talking about this, when we're talking about mental health awareness and suicide prevention, I think that sometimes those words can become platitudes. And when we're talking about mental health, we're often talking about how do we reduce the stigma around it. And I think it's important to come back
right?
to definitions. Like the actual definition of stigma is a mark of shame associated with a way of being. That shame and that mark of disgrace is what we're really trying to erase. And so there's a stigma connected to all the different aspects of this. There's a stigma connected to the words mental health. There's a stigma connected to dying by suicide. And there's a stigma connected to, for me, to diagnoses of mental illnesses, or a stigma to having an amazing life, but still struggling in secret. And so when we're trying to shift culture, whether that be in an organization or on a community level or on a societal level, it comes down to breaking down those stigmas. That has to happen through conversation. It has to come through building a culture that honors and prioritizes prioritizes those aspects of the human experience. The way that we do that is primarily through vulnerability. That's what it's going to take. The vulnerability for the people you're speaking with. It's probably CEOs who don't want to tell their whole company that they have mental illness. They don't have to do that. I'm not advocating for blind or public vulnerability, whether it be at a company or whether it be societally. But we have to show up in a way that's vulnerable to create the space for others. I often tell people, use me as a form of vulnerability so that you don't have to risk sharing yourself. You don't have to risk the vulnerability hangover. Share one of my films with somebody. You're creating a lifeline in that sense. But then to speak more specifically to whether you're in an organization, you're out in your community, you're in your everyday life, like what are we actually looking for in terms of how do we help people? How do we change things? We all have amazing human intuition, and we have to trust that. We are humans, we are social creatures by nature and by definition, and we have it within us to be able to read what somebody's experiencing, what they're feeling, and to know, hey, somebody's not doing great, and we need to make sure that they're in the social circles and they have access to the resources where they're able to actually address these things.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of people self-medicate. They just drown it out with substances and pretend it's not happening. That's, I think, how a lot of people manage it, which is unfortunate. For the reasons you stated, the stigma, the shame, they don't want to be known or labeled as X, Y, or Z. And so therefore they just hide it.
Yeah. I think too, in the relation to your audience and the circles that you run into, like I think the term self-medicate also makes me think too that a lot of us also mask these things or create a facade or create a false feedback loop in creating some semblance of feeling better through external validation or through traditional forms of success. And external validation is never the solution to internal turmoil. And oftentimes some of the people who are struggling are the people who we least expect it. And I think it's because we have those marks of external validation or traditional success in our society.
Yeah. We had a saying when we lived in Boulder, more money, more problems. How can they have a problem? How can they be like that? And it's just, we're all humans, no matter how much money is in our bank account. Wow. So what's next for Drew? You said you're going to do the podcast this year with what are you going to call it?
I think it's vain, but I'm just going to call it the Drew Petersen podcast. I'm doing that because
you want that external validation, Drew. Come on.
Yeah, I'm speaking to no external validation as the solution to internal turmoil. But the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to create another brand and I pigeonhole the podcast, because what I'm speaking to of the success that I've found athletically, professionally, like in business entrepreneurship, is like being genuine to who I am. So like the podcast, I'm curious to explore a lot of different people and topics. And one of the other things that I'm working on is I have these hats that say I give a fuck about mental health, and there's a little hot pink heart where the U should be. And so I'm working on building that into more of a brand. And I was like, I could name the podcast after that. But then it has to be all mental health conversations. And personally, even a mental health guy like me doesn't want to listen to a mental health conversation all the time. So it's really just a broader exploration of what I'm interested in and what the people in my spheres care about. And that's like one of the ways that I think of what does it mean to give a fuck? It means that you care and that you're doing something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. And I call my podcast Above the Treeline. And I think you actually gave me some really great statements, quotes. In fact, I'm using one of them in the opening slide of my keynote presentation with a picture of you and your colleague. I think it was before you did the Leadville, when you were skiing the peaks around the Leadville. And so you're climbing up this snow peak, and down in the valley, it's green. And you talk about being able to see the connection of the streams and the fauna. And that's essentially what I've been saying about getting above the tree line, to be able to see differently, to be able to see where you've been, where you're going, and have that clarity and that sense of direction when you're there. But it's also this place of, it's a place of challenge. When I get up there, my fingers swell up. It's a place where sometimes we're not supposed to be as humans, but you just like to run there because you're superhuman. You and I connected, and you were able to understand where I was going with the above the tree line, because the first thing I get from people is, are you in the key industry? Like, no, I wish, but no, I'm not. So you'll be a star in my keynote.
I love that. Thanks, Andy. And that was really fun when you asked me in the realm of what's it mean to be above the tree line. It was fun to just pontificate on it because really, like, being in the Alpine, I think, are where some of my best memories and where life feels the most vibrant. Like you said, the perspective too that you gain. When you brought that up and reminded me of pontificating on that, it made me think too, with this move to Carbondale and creating a new hometown, in my heart and soul, I knew what I needed to do when I moved here was like go up on the peak above town, Mount Sopris, and go up there. I went up there with my girlfriend and her dog. It's a place of ceremony and celebration and transformation for me.
People have asked me how I got to be doing this, and I honestly say I don't know. But I can tell you there was a moment that I woke up and I had this idea, and this thought came to me, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and this is what you're going to call it. And it was literally like that. You're going to start this research analyst firm, and you're going to call it Above the Tree Line. And it was divine intervention. I don't know, you can put a label on it, but it just resonated. It just felt right to me. I have a really cool picture of my son Alex where he's up on the top. So Grays is like the beginner 14er in Colorado. But anyway, it's this really cool picture of him with just snow-capped peaks and blue background, and it's just such an awesome shot. I don't know if that ultimately was the inspiration for me or not, but I just love this idea of the metaphor that I use in my talk is that a lot of times people in today in the age of transformation and change are lost in the trees, right? They're down in the trees, they're looking up at the trees going, where do I go? How do I get out of there? And I say, you got to climb to higher ground. You got to get above the tree line and see what's going on. And so I talk a lot about that metaphor, my keynote, and it's been really fun. It's really resonated with people. And I think I'm going to throw that picture of you up there climbing and skinning up on your skis with that quote. And people are going to be like, what the hell? And I'm like, perfect. I want you to go. This isn't going to be some chart with a bunch of data and a bunch of blah, blah, blah. We're going to talk about something totally different. And so just that imagery, just to set people in a different place, right? To just say, oh, we're going to go somewhere else here for the next half an hour. And so thank you for those images. And then there's one where there's like the trail going right down the ridge of the mountain and you're running up the trail towards the camera. My goal is to really talk about human story of digital transformation in technology. And for some of the same reasons, that can be really distressing for a lot of people, right? It can be their career, it could be the business they started, it could impact them in a lot of different ways. And I just use stories of my life growing up in a family printing business that was destroyed by technology. I spent a decade in the music industry that was obviously transformed by technology. You're still pretty young, but I'm guessing you had an iPad or iPod when you were
Oh
a
yeah,
music player.
yeah. I had a flip phone. With moving, I had to get rid of a bunch of stuff, and I did find an old iPod. I was like, whoa.
Oh, really?
With the spinning wheel.
Something. Oh, wow. Yeah, you don't see those anymore. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover or wanted to talk about or is on your heart that you wanted to just put out there that I could share with my audience?
I'm not feeling too inclined on the self-promotion version of how to end a podcast that people normally do.
Trust me.
But I'll give you this. This is one of the messages that I was sharing with those high school students, and that's just been like very present in my life recently and this year is when I go run 100 milers, we always talk about the why. You have to have a very clear why to get you to the finish line. And I've had multiple different ones. It used to be that was a goal that got me through the darkest depressive and suicidal episodes in my life. And then this summer, I ran 2 different 100 milers. And the first one, I ran with the why of it being an act of self-love and opening myself to the experience that I was having inside. And then the second one, I ran with the why of love, being a vessel of love, and being worthy of and deserving of love. And a lot of the path that I've walked is an evolution of learning to love myself. I used to hate myself to my absolute core. And learning to love myself and learning to love myself as a verb and through actions, I think is why my story resonates with people on a broader level than just mental health or mental illness. Been passing on to people lately. is that
Yeah.
simply by being human beings on this planet and by being alive, there's no other qualifier necessary. We are all deserving of and worthy of love.
Yeah, right on. That's so powerful, Drew. And thank you for just being and just carrying that for us and having a platform that is interesting to a lot of kids who probably really need to hear it. Thank you. I really appreciate it, Drew. It's good to see you. And yeah, when the snow flies, I'll get down to Aspen and we'll do some turns. Maybe it'll be Snowmass, big, fat, wide groomer.
Sounds perfect.
Let her rip. Hey, man, it's good to see you. I'm so glad that you're well, and I'm so glad we met. It's just been a really a blessing for me. So thank you.
Likewise, Andy. It's good to see you. Good to chat